Russ, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Tony, for having me.
Now, you sent a letter to GOP co-sponsors regarding fairness for all. Why did you send the letter and what does it say?
I sent a letter because I'm concerned that as the Equality Act goes to the Senate and is likely filibustered, and that is the domino effect if the filibuster is maintained, my concern is that the left looks for another bill that could pass. And this bill has 20 Republican members who have signed on to it. It is specifically being pitched by its sponsor as a compromise in the cultural wars. And what it does is it attempts to be for two things: providing rights against discrimination for LGBT and gay individuals, but also to provide religious liberty rights for peoples of faith. And unfortunately, it is much too much of a concession in that regard for our society at large. It's not just that we need a civil society that protects people of faith, and I don't think it actually does that, and I can get into that. But we don't want to live in a society that is not based on true human nature and reality, where there are male and female created and with biological differences that go to the core of who they are and how society should be ordered. And there's a cascading impact of practical implications, whether that's the end of female sports, the end of female-only spaces, whether that is the violation of conscious rights for medical professionals and hospitals that don't want to do gender transition surgeries, on and on. There are practical implications of a bill like this. So it doesn't really mean it's a compromise. It's a surrender to the cultural wars. And unfortunately, it's something that I believe that as a people, we need to rise up and oppose.
You know, Russ, as I look at the legislation, what I see in reading through it is that it simply carves out area for religious institutions or organizations, not so much for individuals who want to exercise religious freedom. And you got to go back to the Constitution. The Constitution guarantees religious freedom, not to churches, but to people who make up those churches, who make up the workplace, and every other realm of our society.
Yeah, this is about the ability to practice your faith in society. It's not about protecting your ability to go on Sunday to worship and benefit from a female-only bathroom. It is the ability for a female employer who is a Christian to go out into the workplace and be able to operate and practice their faith according to the views that they have. This bill would not allow that person to do that. And what's worse, it would lead the entire society to move in the direction of the progressive ideology on which it's based.
And my experience has been these carve-outs are very short-lived. And they're primarily done to silence one of the most, in this case, it happens to be the church, but generally these carve-outs are designed to silence an influential majority that could keep the legislation from passing. In this case, it's the church, and they're carving it out for the church and religious liberty, only to come back and mop up later once everyone else is living under this forced acceptance of human sexuality that's been redefined.
Yeah, you're a veteran of these wars, Tony, and you've been leading on this for many, many years. And so you know exactly how this works, unfortunately, and that is they put these carve-outs in place and then they whittle them down later on as they find new forms of what they view as discrimination, which is not the case. Christian florists and Christian bakers are not out there saying we are not going to serve individuals who are LGBT. They may make a decision that they're not going to participate in a wedding ceremony, but the idea that they have not opened their companies to do business with these individuals is not true. And so that's another lie that this legislation is founded upon.
Russ, let's talk about, you mentioned girls' sports. What would this do to women's sports?
Well, it would continue to allow bureaucrats to basically put rules in place that force women's sports to be open to biological males. And so there is a significant cascading impact when it comes to the practical effects of this. And so if you care about the differences in allowing women to have their own sporting events and males similarly, this would not allow that to take place. And I saw that personally bills like these, when they are being considered by the federal agencies, when the laws are not defined clearly and the practical implications are left open for bureaucrats or courts to account for, it means that culture wins left and right. And that is my fear for this legislation, that it's not just women's sports, but it's conscience protections for medical professionals and on and on.
Right. The list is exhaustive when you look at just how far-reaching this legislation and you're correct in that you have described it as more of an Equality Act light. Um, what are you asking people across the country to do as you've reached out to lawmakers, but what can our viewers tonight do as well?
Sure, they can go to AmericanRestorationCenter.com and see a copy of the letter. The 20 Republican members were asking for those members to withdraw their name from support of the legislation. They can do that. And that would allow us to ensure that the left can't look to this bill as a temptation if they continue to be stymied in the Senate with regard to the Equality Act. And in general, to just be educated. I talk about being informed citizens, knowing how damaging the Equality Act is and the Fairness for All Act, and letting their members know about it, both directly and in any public platforms that they might have access to, like Twitter or Facebook.
Have you heard from any of the Republican co-sponsors since you sent the letter to them?
Not quite. They have not chosen to reach out yet, but we're going to be following up with them to make sure they understand all of the concerns with the legislation, and we're not going to just let it run over the transom.
Well, Russ Vought, I want to thank you for joining us tonight, but also thank you for taking on this issue as one of the first projects of your new venture. And this is an important one, but one that a lot of people don't want to touch because with it comes the wrath of the cancel culture, which you've experienced a little bit of. You're a veteran of that fire of testing, and you have withstood that and been refined by it. And I thank you for your leadership and your courage.
Thanks, Tony.
Russ Vought, to find out more, you can follow to the website. Also, we've got some resources available for you as well on this issue of fairness for all. You go to frc.org/fairness for all. And I encourage you to contact, as Russ said, contact your congressman. Now, doesn't matter if they are on the list of co-sponsors or not. Best practice is just to contact all of them and let them know that they need to not support this legislation.